for those who remember the olden days when we had DOS, or worse, when we had machine language, which is zeros and ones, which is really what's going on behind the scenes of our user-friendly graphics of Windows, it's very frustrating. So yesterday's Gemara was looking for the mechanics of where you find a lav, a zhara for Inui. And we actually had to dribble in to the back rooms and the back rooms of the Torah to know where we learn it from. So at the end of the day, it doesn't say anywhere beferish a lav for fasting or for Inui and Kippur, but we import the lav from other places. So in one shot in the Gemara, we had that we import the lav from the lav of the Isra Malacha of Yom Kippur, because we learned there's 5 psukim that discuss the Isra Malacha on Yom Kippur, and only 4 of them are needed. So the 5th time is extra to say that the same way you have a lav for Malacha on Yom Kippur, you also have a lav on Inu of Yom Kippur. And in that shot, we actually struggled why you need a special pasuk for Yamama and Lelia. We needed a special pasuk to tell you that you also do Malacha by night, and it's also do Malacha by day. And we needed a special pasuk to say that you get an ownership you do Malacha by night, and the ownership you do by day. And if I'm not mistaken, Chaim Tzvi wanted to offer a shot that by Yom Kippur it says Be'etzem Hayoyim Hazeh. And since it says Be'etzem Hayoyim Hazeh, then you might think that the Easter is only on the day itself. That's what he wanted to Taina. And in the 9 o'clock shir, someone told me over from one of the Rishonim who learns like that shot. So by Yom Kippur, we need a special pasuk to tell us that both by night and by day, all these Yisurim apply, because you might have thought it only applies by day because it says Be'etzem Hayoyim Hazeh. That was the first.
Yosy, I'd like to point something out. In this week's Parsha, we have a pasuk that says, "V'amarta lahem zeho isha asher takrivu laHashem kvasas b'nei shana tamima," etc. And Rashi says, "V'amarta lahem azhara lebezdin." It's a warning to Bezdin. So he's using the hazhara for a mitzvah saseh. He's using the term ashara.
Rashi's using the word ashara to describe a mitzvah say. Okay, that's so here in the Gemara, and most of the times the Gemara is referring to a lav. But you told me that sometimes you find at least Rashi uses the word ashara to describe a mitzvah say.
I know. I'm presuming that colloquially they use it even as an asay. It's a warning. The word ashara is a warning. So how do you say a warning on a mitzvah saseh?
You better do it.
So azhara is used. We're saying a lot. We're saying azhara is a lot. We're working with that assumption, right? That's the problem.
The Gemara, when the Gemara uses the word azhara, the Gemara is referring to a lot. Now the Gemara is saying whenever the Torah describes or prescribes an einish for something, there had to have been a pre-warning to it, which would be in the form of a lav.
Okay, but Rashi doesn't use that methodology.
Rashi uses the word asara just as a warning.
That's right.
So the warning, a warning could be for mitzvah say as well. But
okay.
In this Gemara's sense, the Gemara is saying you can't punish somebody for doing a violation unless you warned him before. And in the context of a lav, the warning would be a lav.
Right, but according to Rashi, an asay could be ashara as well. I just want to point that out.
Okay, yeah, it's interesting. So it's being mazer to Bezdin to make sure they do the kabbalah.
Right.
Okay, and why is it the Bezdin and not the Kohanim? Because they're in charge. The Sanhedrin is there in charge, overseeing everything.
I suppose. Yeah.
Okay, Gavaltik. Oh, good morning, Dovi. How's your trip?
We made it over the border.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so let's see the Gemara here. So that was the first recur. It was the first source of a lav for Inui. The Gemara brought a second option, and that was learning it from raping. When there's when the Torah discusses Inui, which is where the rapist gets killed for his nus, there had to have been a lav first. So just like there's a lav there, we'll import that there's a lav here as well. That was the second option. The third option was by Yom Kippur. It uses the word Shabbos Shabbos, right? Which tells us to compare it to Shabbos Bereshis, which means the regular Shabbos that we have. Just like on Shabbos, there's a lav not to do malacha. Then there's the Einish. So too, on Yom Kippur, there's a lav for Inui. So we're importing it by just saying, since there's a lav there, there's a lav here. And the fourth shita is that it says in the sugya of Yom Kippur itself, it uses the word tishbeshu Shabbatchem to tell you that Yom Kippur is just like Shabbos, and therefore it also has that built-in lav of Shabbos. So those were the four options from where to learn the lav of Inui. So it's a good trivia question. Where is the lav for Inui Yom Kippur? You could say it's speaking by being Ma'ana Nair Marasa. It could be from Shabbos. There's only one shita who holds it's imported directly from Yom Kippur, from the Isser Malach. And then the Gemara discussed yesterday the Inui, how you have to have Tosfos Shabbos, and you have to have Tosfos Yom Kippur, and Tosfos Yom Tov. And then the Gemara discussed that by fasting on the 9th day, it's like you fasted on the 10th day. I was just reviewing yesterday because it's a complicated day. Yeah, I meant literally. So, and I forgot the third reason why. Yesterday I spoke out two reasons why the Rishonim will learn you're supposed to fast on the 9th day. One is, like Rashi says here, the eating on the 9th day is like fasting because it's preparation for Yom Kippur to be able to fast. Other Rishonim will learn that by eating, it gets you used to eating, which makes it harder to fast the next day, and it increases the inui of the 10th day, and that's why it's like you fasted on the 9th day. And the other pshat that I forgot to mention was that it's the Sudas Yom Tov. It's the Sudas Yom Tov. Yom Kippur requires a Sudas Yom Tov, but you can't eat on Yom Kippur. So the Sudas Yom Tov of Yom Kippur is on the 9th day, and David Dayan spoke yesterday from the Chedush Harim that the reason why there's a mitzvah to eat on Erev Yom Kippur is beautiful, because when you eat, you're in a good mood. And what are you supposed to do in Yom Kippur? You're supposed to beit zich iber. You're supposed to ask mechila from your friends. If your friend's in a grouchy mood, he's not likely to be meichel you. But if you had a good suda, if you just had a good suda and you're all relaxed, and someone asks you mechila, yeah, meichel you, no problem. But if you're miserable and hungry, you might be less likely to be meichel. That's what the Chedush Harim says.
His nature is to make solutions. My nature is to make problems. So I want to ask you, where do we ever find in another place, according to the Shita, to make it harder? Where do we ever find in another place in the Torah?
You're supposed to make it harder.
Where do we find this?
Well, Yom Kippur, you're supposed to be hard. You're supposed to make inu.
No, but
By a thing of inu.
No, but there's an idea that when you have a mitzvah, the mitzvah itself is hard. Inu is hard. But where do we have an idea of another mitzvah where the Chacham say you're supposed to make the mitzvah even harder than it is?
It is not a Chachamim. They're learning this from the pasuk. The pasuk says you should do inu on the chi. The pasuk says you should do inu also on the 9th day. So it's not Chazal making it up. He's up to Gemara. No, I like your approach. Who's looking to make things harder, make things easier? Okay, Kaval.
And more geschmack.
That's right.
It's not supposed to be kosher, it's supposed to be nice.
It did, and clean. Okay, Zok to Gemara. That's called herlich.
I told you about it.
Zok to Gemara. If you don't eat proper food, you will not violate the chiyuv of eating. Amarava, kas palpali b'yoyim dikippur. I'm going to ask you to help me a little with the art scroll. This means if you ate papalim in such a way where it's not the right way to eat it. So maybe it means you swallow it whole, but you didn't eat it properly. Or kas zangvila b'yom dikippur. If you just swallowed ginger, I think, on Yom Kippur potter, you'll be potter because that's not derech achila. Major fact to Gemara, I'm going to in fact prove to you that it is called a meichel. It is derech achila. It says in the pasuk regarding the Isser Arla, which means payers who grow the first 3 years, you're not allowed to eat. It says Varaltem Arlosoyes period. So let's look at the pasuk. So so you plant a new tree. Varaltem Arlosoyes period. The first 3 years you're not allowed to eat the pears. It says Shalosh Shonim Yelachem Arelim Lo Yeyach. So 3 years it should be for you arelim, and you shouldn't be. So Zok the Bryce. It says Varaltem Arlosoyes period. Ein Yodea Sheitz Machalu. I know if it's telling me that you shouldn't eat his pears, obviously it's a tree that produces pears. So why does the Torah go weiter and say Alamata Midloimer Eitz Michael? It should have just said the Chisavaya Loretz Baraltam or Los Esperiya Shalosh Shonim, and we know already that the Torah would be referring to a tree that produces fruit. So why did the Torah have to designate Eitz Michael? So tomorrow we learn from there that it even includes Eitz Shetam Eitzoi Upirye Shava. It even includes an Eitz if the Eitz tastes like the berry. I would say Zepal Palim. It's referring to, the Torah is even referring to a plant that grows pepper. The Lamdacha to teach you, Shapal Palin, Chayobin Ba'arla. That Parpalin also follow the rules of Arla. And I don't think this means a green pepper and a red pepper and yellow pepper. It means like a little black pepper. You know what it means, right? And it's also telling you, as an aside, a nice rule, a nice piece of information, that the Ein Eretz Yisrael Chasei Raklum. Any natural resource required, Eretz Yisrael has. Eretz Yisrael is kol boy. It includes everything. Shenemar loisechser kol boy. My wife once met a well-known elderly woman who's no longer alive in the grocery store, and gas was very expensive. So she was once saying, "I don't understand. Why did the Eibush was an older girl? Why did the Eibush make Eretz Yisrael zula v'chulav v'dvash? The Eibush made oil. Oil will get outside Eretz Yisrael. This chulav v'dvash. Oil can be the chayv and the chulav v'dvash." But now we know that Israel found the largest natural gas field in the world. They found in the Mediterranean. So they have everything. Israel has everything. So I'll call upon them. What we extract from this brisa is that these are foods. They are ma'chalim. So how could you say that you're potter if you eat them on Yom Kippur? So it depends the condition that they're in. Tifta. When is it considered a ma'chal? That's if it's moist, if it's fresh. If it's dried out, then it's no longer a ma'chal. When the brisa said that you're kos palpali or kos angvila, your potter, it's when it's dried out. Hi himlasa. This himlasa, if anybody has an art scroll that could say what it is, Rashi is liturgica. I don't know what it means. A lectuary? Okay, so I don't know what that is. Oh, so that's what Rashi says. So you mix ground besamim with dvash. The asim Yehudahi, it comes from India. Shori, it's mutter to eat. Lagabe what? Zok Rashi, the ein by mishum bishulei nachem. If you buy it from a goy, there's no problem of bishulakim. Why not? Shenechal kamoishu chai. If there's a food that can be eaten raw, then there's no isser to eat it if it's cooked. Of course, you have to know it's kosher. There's no trace of ingredients. But just the fact that the goy cooked it won't be a problem if it's something that could have been eaten raw. And we don't need to worry that since it was cooked in their pots, maybe it's treif. The nice time of gum. So Zok Gemara, since Rab Nachman is saying that there's no problem with bishul akum on such a thing, it's a raya that it could be eaten raw. So once again, I guess that has zangvil in it. So how could it be a chila? That it could be eaten raw when it's moist. It cannot be eaten raw when it's dried out. And once again, what we said earlier, that if you ate palpalim, zangvila, it's not going to be chayiv on Yom Kippur when it's dried out because they're no longer considered a ma'chal. Tanaban, achal alei kanim. He ate the leaves of reeds. I'm not even sure what it is. Does the article say what that is?
Yeah, he says leaves of reeds.
Leaves of reeds. Okay, so he says, okay, a potter. And I never knew that reeds have leaves. Reeds are just the green things that grow up in a swamp. But I guess reeds have leaves too. The achal ali kanim potter. The loving if you ate a very young sprouts of a grapevine, which I guess are edible, chayiv, then you'll be chayiv. Elohein lulovik fanim. At what point in their growth are they considered lulovim that they're considered foods? Kol shaliv levu Rosh Hashanah v'ad Yom Kippur. As long as they sprouted between Shon Yom Kippur, meaning they're very, very fresh, then they're going to be edible. Rashi says, "Avaliv levu." We're talking about Yom Kippur. Avaliv levu kodim Rosh Hashanah. But if they already sprouted before Rosh Hashanah, farnasu koshim. By the time Yom Kippur comes, they would have already hardened. The eitz ba'almaninu, they would no longer be edible. They would be simply like wood. Rav Kahana Amar Kol Shloshim Yom. For 30 days, which would be even if they sprouted before Rosh Hashanah, they're still considered edible. Tanya Kabas Rabbi Yitzchak Midallah. We learned the Brisa to support Rabbi Yitzchak Midallah. Achal Alekanim Potter, Lulavik Fanim Chayiv. So you see, Lulavik Fanim are considered food. Elohen Lulavik Fanim, Kosher Liv Levu, Rosh Hashanah Vayim Kippurim. If they're still very fresh and soft, and they're still edible. Shosat Sir Aimur Ice Potter. Dr. Mer HaChayvit Chayiv. It's mashma, since the Mishnah listed off certain items that are not edible and choymitz is not on the list, it proves that choymitz is considered a meichel or a mashka. Masnisa Mani, who holds of that choymitz is something that's edible? Rabbi, the Tanya Rabbi, Omer choymitz meishivis a nefesh. Choymitz makes you feel good, and Rashi says the main key is mevatel as a inui. It pulls you out of a status of inui. And this is whenever a Rav says a kula, it always gets blown out of proportion. Darish Rav Gidel Bar Menashe Mibir Denerish, that ain't a lacha to Rebbe. Rebbe who said that you do get a mishivas nefesh from choymitz, and therefore you couldn't eat it on Yom Kippur. He darshan, Rav Gidel darshan, we don't pass like Rebbe. In other words, drinking vinegar will not be a problem on Yom Kippur. So sure enough, the next year everybody exploited his kula. L'shana, next year, nafki kula alma. Suddenly, they opened up a new kiddush club on Yom Kippur. As soon as they got up the shishi, the oil packed out of the bismedrash, and they went down to the kiddush club room. Umazgu v'shasu, they diluted the vinegar, and they drank. V'shasu challah, they drank. The Imam had a regular kiddush club on Yom Kippur. Shamar of Gidor heard about it. The Ikbud, he got very upset. Amar, he said, Amar, the Amriana, the Eved. I didn't say that the mitzvah to go drink this on Yom Kippur. I meant if you drink it, you're not chayav chorus. But look,
either.
Exactly. Amar Damina Porta. I also said just a little bit. Tuva mi Amri, did I say you should have a whole party? And Amar Damina Chai, Mozik mi Amri, like Duvi said. I said raw vinegar. Once it's diluted, it's much more edible. So you distorted my sock and you made a kiddush club. I never agreed to that. Okay. Zok the Gemara. Hatinoikis. This is going to be a little bit of a complicated Gemara, so we have to halt up. Hatinoikis, a young child. Ein ma'anin oisan. And Rashi teaches, ein chayovin limnoya mehen maicho. You don't have to stop them from eating food b'yom kippur. So right away, this runs into a little bit of a difficulty. Because what do you mean you don't force them to fast? Why would I think otherwise? If they're not gedolim or gedolos, why would I think you would? Why do I have to speak it out? So this actually opens up a whole interesting thing. There are Rishonim who learn differently than Rashi. And they say, Ein ma'an naisha means you're not allowed to let them fast. From Rashi, it's mashma that Ein chayovin lemnoya mehem eichel, but you could let them fast. And the Shaila, their Medayik, what's Rashi's Chiddush? Rashi's Chiddush might be that Ein chayovin lemnoya mehem eichel, but if they want to fast, you're allowed to let them fast. There's actually a machlokes Rishonim if you're even allowed to let children fast. And I believe the Trumas Hadeshin weighs in on the Shaila, and he says that even if you're going to let your children eat, while they're allowed to eat, you should avoid actively feeding them on Yom Kippur, because you're not allowed to be Michael Yisurim to a child. So of course, if the child needs your help, you can prepare the meals. But whatever they can do by themselves, you should let them do by themselves.
So told his son to go eat. He wasn't by mitzvah, and he told him to go make kiddush. The son told the Rebbe, I don't want to make kiddush, I want to make kiddush. And the Rebbe says, no, you have to make kiddush. He goes, no, the only key that I have to make kiddush is in Chametz. But by the time I become the mitzvah, I'm not allowed to eat. I'm not going to make kiddush.
So on Yom Kippur, I don't need kiddush for kiddush. Very good, very good, very good. Okay. And what then is probably a Mafrash said, listen to me? Or okay, Zak Gemara, Aval. You are mechanech them before. And Rashi says the definition of mechanchen, and this is very relevant because that's how the Gemara names on the Havmina. Mechanchen means l'shois. You don't let them fast the whole day, but you have them fast a little bit. And the Stipler asks, the halacha is that when you're mechanech a child, you have to be mechanech them halacha. For instance, if you want to get your child a chinuch set of daled minim, you can't give him possible daled minim. You have to give him kosher daled minim. Or if you want to be mechanech sit in the sukkah, he's got to sit in the kosher sukkah. So v'osepes on Yom Kippur, you don't have a full tinus. What type of chinuch is that? So there's different pshat. One pshat is because you don't have an nature, you can't make him fast all day. But the other pshat is there's shittas will learn that every minute of Yom Kippur that you fast is a mitzvah for zich. So whatever he could do, he could do. Now, this is a very interesting expression of lefnei shana, lefnei shasayim. It sounds, so what it says is before the year and before the 2 years. So Rashi explains it based on how the Gemara understands it is lefnei shana doesn't mean, let's say a girl is a gedola at 12, it doesn't mean a year early at 12, at 11. That's not what lefnei shana means. The shana that we're talking about is the shana before she's 12. So when it says shana, it means when she's 11. Lefnei shana means when she's 10. Lefnei shana, before the year, that's before the year that she becomes a gedolah. And Chaim Tzvi made a thing with his eyes, and I did also. It doesn't make sense. Why don't you speak straight? Why speak in such a modern way? Before the year, that's before the year that. So we're going to soon learn in the Gemara that there are shittas who learn that when the girl's 11 or when the boy's 12, he has to fast a whole day. And lefnei shana means before the year that he has to fast a whole day. Before that year, he should fast l'shois. So that's why it makes sense to stick in and identify that extra year. Or lefnei shnasayim, or even 2 years before. So again, a year before would be 11, 2 years before would be 9. So this mission is suggesting that a young girl should start fasting l'shois. We should be mechanech to start fasting a little bit when she's already 9. Why? B'shvil sheyiyu regilim b'mitzvahs. Now the next Gemara is going to get a little bit complicated because we're going to be discussing how many years before should you have to start fasting, and we're going to be going back and forth from boys to girls, which makes it confusing because the question is the date of godless 13 or is it 12? So I'm going to try to focus on girls because that's what the Gemara, that's the Mishnah focuses on, so that it should be a little bit less confusing. But I found it when I was learning it a little bit confusing.
I find the last couple of words in the Mishnah, meaning that by becoming accustomed to fasting, they're going to be rogel, they're going to become rogel in all of it.
Now, that's how you're learning it.
I'm wondering if that's the case.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure why fasting makes you a well rogel on mitzvahs. The one mitzvah I know a person will be rogel if he fasts, and that is to make the Suda Mochi Yom Kippur. That'll for sure induce that. Well, I'm not sure, but it's a good aura. He could say she rogel b'mitzvah Yom Kippur. I hear. The other question is the Maseches Yuma is discussing Yom Kippur. So why did the Mishnah Atidog is aiming on should be Yom Kippurim? What do you think we're talking about? Tisha B'av. We're talking about Yom Kippur. So there are Rishonim or Medayik from here that the only Chi of Chinuch that there ever is Yom Kippur. There's never a reason to fast before Tisha B'av. There's never a reason to have a child who's not bar mitzvah or bas mitzvah to even fast as Chinuch before Tisha B'av or before any other thing. So Dr. Gemara, Hashta, Bifnei Shtayim Mechachem. The Mishnah is a very modern lashon. B'mechanecher at 10 and at 9. Just say b'mechanecher at 9. If you're starting at 9, obviously at 10 she's going to be fasting with shoyos. So you're telling me that this girl, when she's 9 years old, she already has to start fasting l'shoyos b'fnei shanim iboy. So surely when she's 10, she's going to be fasting l'shoyos. So what is this unusual expression of the Mishnah 2 years before or a year before? Rav Chisda says it's not fair. Lefnei Shana and Lefnei Shnasayim, the Mishnah, are referring to two different people. If a child is healthy, we want him to start fasting l'shoyos when this girl is 9 years old, and that's the Lefnei Shnasayim. But if this child is not so strong and not so healthy, then she should only start fasting when she's 10 years old. Amar Rafuna says, Ben Ches uven Tes. So let's stop a second before I start with Rafuna. So Rav Chisda learned that our Mishnah is actually referring to two separate people. Lefnei Shana is talking about a child who's sickly. Lefnei Shnasayim, at 9 years old, is a child who's healthy. Okay, that's the end of our Mishnah. Now we're going to quote a new shaila, a new halacha. And here it gets confusing because it says ben, but it means bas. Amar Avuna ben ches, which really means a girl who's 8 years old. So we just said that at 9 years, in our Mishnah, the earliest fasting for a healthy girl is going to be at 9 years old. That's what we just determined, according to Rav Chisda. Rav Huna argues. Rav Huna says ben ches uben tes. An 8-year-old will start already fasting l'shoyos if she is healthy, uventes, and someone who's not well will start at 9 years old. So once again, the word chinuch is used to describe not a full day fast. It's a word that's used to describe a fasting several hours. But ben yud, ben yud aleph, and once again it means bas yud and bas yud aleph. Once a girl is 10 and 11, so at 8 and 9, she's going to fast part of the day. When she's 10 and when she's 11, mashlimin midirabanon. There midirabanon, there's a mitzvah for her to fast the entire day. Ben Yud Beis, and one who's 12, which is already a male, Ben Yud Beis, when she's 12 already, a girl, she's bas mitzvah already, mashlimin midiraisa, then of course she has to fast the whole day. Midiraisa, she's going to do. And B'tinoikis, all of this was talking about a B'tinoikis. So that's how I know the Ben Ches and the Ben Tes was really meant a Bas, because at the end he says we're talking about a Tinoikis. That's the Shita of Rav Huna. Rav Nachman agrees to Rav Huna, but Rav Nachman provides the same information referring to a male child. And therefore everything starts a year later. Rav Nachman number Ben Tes, Ben Yud, Mechan Chanois Alashois, Ben Yud Aleph, Ben Yud Beis, Mashlimin Midirabanan, and Ben Yud Gimel, Mashlimin Midiraisa. B'tinuk, and I'm speaking about a male. So basically, Rav Huna and Rav Nachman are saying exactly the same thing, which means that you start 3 years before. So a girl starts, 4 years before. A healthy girl starts at 8. A non-healthy girl starts at 9. And for boys, a healthy boy starts at 9, and a non-healthy boy starts at 10. Rav Chisda learned to their Mishnah differently. Rav Chisda learned to their Mishnah that a non-healthy girl starts at 9, right? Rav Chisda says a non-healthy girl starts at 9, and the healthy girl, Rav Chisda, a non-healthy girl starts at 10, and the healthy girl starts at 9. That's Rav Chisda's sheet. Rabbi Yochanan, now we have a third shita. Neither is a shlama d'Rabbanan lek. Never is there a mitzvah d'Rabbanan before the child is a gadol to fast the whole day. Rather, ben yud aleph. If a girl is either 10 or 11, she only has to fast a couple of hours, never the whole day, and only Ben Yud Beis, only once this girl is a complete adult, then mashliman midaraisa. So those are the 3 shitas that we have how to learn it. Now, halacha l'maisa nowadays, the Mishnah Berurah speaks out that we are not so strong like they used to be in the olden days. We're not built as rugged as they used to be. And he passes the machlokes who you pass like. So the Mishnah Berurah passes like the Rishonim, who pass like Rabbi Yochanan, that you never ever have to fast a whole day before you're good. So Zok the Mishnah. Now we're going to look at our Mishnah and see who our Mishnah fits in best with. Now right off the bat, we know our Mishnah fits in like Reb Chisda, because Reb Chisda was directly addressing our Mishnah. But we're going to have to see now how our Mishnah fits in with the Shita of Rabbi Yochanan, and how our Mishnah fits in with the Shita of Rav Huna. So now our Mishnah says, "Hatinoikis ein ma'aninoisim b'yom kippurim, aval machanchen oisan lefnei shana ulefnei shnasai." So Reb Chisda, we already know the lefnei shana and lefnei shnasai is referring to lefnei shana at 10 if she's not healthy, and lefnei shnasai at 9 if she is healthy. So according to Rav Nachman, where the healthy girl starts at 8 and the non-healthy girl starts at 9, how will we explain our Mishnah? Not like Reb Chisda, that our Mishnah is speaking about 2 different children, the healthy child and the non-healthy child. Rather, we'll say the Mishnah is talking about only the non-healthy child. And therefore, Mishnah Rav Nachman, lefnei shana v'lefnei shnayim, means as follows. We're speaking about a non-healthy child. A non-healthy child starts fasting, according to them, at 9 years old. At 9 years old, she's 1 year before the year before she fasts midirabanan. So when does she have to fast midirabanan? She has to fast midirabanan when she's 11. The year before she's 11, she's 10. And lefnei shana, the year before the year that she becomes 11, is when she starts fasting. And it also happens to be 2 years before the year that she fasts midaraisa. So they could learn lefnei shana v'lefnei shnasayim is referring to the 2 years that she fasts a whole day. Lefnei shana l'devrayim, 1 year before the year that she fasts midarabanan. Lefnei shnayim l'dvar Torah. The Bach changes it, and she's fasting already at 9, which is 2 years which is 2 years before the year before she fasts midiraisa. So according to the way Rav Huna and Rav Nachman will learn, the Mishnah is speaking exclusively about a child who's sick, and the 1 year before and the 2 years before are referring to the 1 year before the year that she fasts full day midirabanan, and 2 years before she fasts full day midiraisa. Ella, Rabbi Yochanan Kash, according to Rabbi Yochanan, it's going to be very, very fair, because Rabbi Yochanan holds that she fasts only when she's 9, only when she's 10 and 11. He doesn't add the year when she's 9 and when she's 8. So according to Rabbi Yochanan, how is it? How will you understand our mission? So Chaim Tzvi will love Rabbi Yochanan's prat, because Rabbi Yochanan does. Rabbi Yochanan learned the mission means a year before she becomes a gadol. It's directly referring to the year she becomes a gadol. So he'll learn that Shana Oishnasayim Shalach Lepirkon, meaning a child will either start fasting, a young girl will start either fasting at 11 or at 10. And that's what it's referring to, which is exactly what Rabbi Yochanan said. The chinuch, meaning this fasting half a day, occurs when she's 11 and when she's 10, and there is nothing before that at all. And the Mishnah means the way you would have understood it had you read it. Tashma, the Tani, so whenever you have dissatisfaction, it's always the shmak to know that there's an Amir like Rabbi Yochanan, who holds like you. That's right. Tashma, the Tani, well, actually, that's not the way it was. Everybody made a face at Rabbi Yochanan, and then he had to say, no, I learned the Mishnah differently. Zaktimar Tashma, the Tani Rabbi Bar Shmuel, Tinoikas, Ein Ma'anin Oisan. Tinoikas, you don't make them fast, the Yom HaKippurim, Aval Mechanchen Oisan, Shana Oishtayim, Samach Lepirkon. So this is black and white. This doesn't say the lashon of the Mishnah, which would lead you to believe that it means a year before that. Lefnei Shana, Lefnei Shnasayim. It just says Shana Samach Lepirkon. So clearly, it's saying a year or two before Pirkon, which means either at 10 or at 11, which is exactly like what Rabbi Yochanan says. It's perfect. Because they held that you start 4 years before Pirkon, not 2 years. They can answer very simple. When Rabbi Bar Shmuel said you're mechanech them a year or two before, it doesn't mean chinuch of a couple of hours. It's a shloma. It's referring to fasting a full day. And even Rav Huna and Rav Chisda, even Rav Huna and Rav Nachman are moida that you fast a full day 2 years before, and that's what it means. When Rabbi Bar Shmuel said that you're mechanech them, are you going to interpret that as meaning that you fast the whole day? But Tanya, we learned that Brisa. What does chinuch mean? If you used to eat at the second hour of the day, feed him an hour later. Or b'shalosh machil nasha b'arba. So you see clearly that when the Brisa uses the word chinuch, it doesn't mean fasting all day. It means only fasting part of the day. Amar Rabbi Baruch, no problem. There's two types of chinuchs. There's the chinuch of shayis and there's the chinuch of hashlama. And Rabbi Bar Shmuel is allowed to refer to hashlama, finishing the whole day, as a chinuch as well. Okay, now we're easy. Ubra sharicha, an ubra, a pregnant woman who smelled something yummy. So we know it's a sakana for a woman who's pregnant not to eat if she has a taiva. But you know where the taiva stems from? The taiva stems from, Rashi says, why does a pregnant woman get a taiva to eat something? It's not because of her. It's her uber meriach reach tapshel. The baby, the fetus is actually smelling that geshmak, a rib steak, and he becomes hungry for it, and that makes it that her desire comes to eat that. And if she won't eat what she's craving terribly, it puts both the mother and child into a sakanas nefashos. So the halach is machil nasha, you allow her to eat enough that she's not going to be in a bad situation anymore. And there's a whole big shaila if you're allowed to be mechal Shabbos, mechal Yom Tov, in order to save an Uber or not. So Rashi says specifically that it puts the mother in danger. There are those who learn that automatically, what if we know that there's no danger for the mother, there's only a danger for the Uber? There's a shaila in the Rishonim if you're allowed to be mechal Shabbos for that, but many Rishonim hold that if the child is in danger, it will automatically put the mother into a sakana, so you for sure are allowed to be mechal Shabbos. Here we're talking about Yom Kippur anyway. So chayla, machilan oisai al pibekin. A chayla, you have to feed this chayla if you have two doctors, Rashi says two doctors that tell you that he needs to eat. If there is no baki, machil noisai al pi atzmai, then you can do it by yourself until he's eating enough. I guess it's other. And there's a shaila. What happens if one expert doctor says that he doesn't need to eat, and 10 lower level doctors says he does need to eat, or vice versa? Who do you listen to? Do you listen to the mumcha more, or do you listen to the right? So there's a shaila about that that we're trying to speak about. And Rav Moshe, regardless, says that when you ask a doctor if there's a lot to eat, it has to be a doctor who has an appreciation for the halachas, for the Torah, who respects the Torah. Because if he has no respect at all for the Torah and its mitzvahs, then clearly his opinion isn't so valid, because he doesn't understand that you can't just willy-nilly violate Yom Kippur. And Rav Moshe said that whenever you have such a question, we should never have such a question. You should always be consulting with a Rav in conjunction with the doctor, because a Rav has a special insight to make sure things will be okay. Tanarban, Ubra Sharicha Basar Kodesh. Yeah. He probably said it like I've anything. That's right. So Ubra Sharicha Basar Kodesh, a pregnant woman who smelled Basar Kodesh, and of course you're not allowed to eat Basar Kodesh, or Basar Chazir. So you don't right away give her whatever she needs. You first try to minimize, even when you're Mechal Shabbos, you have to try to minimize it. So first, Taichvin Lakush Beraitiv, you take a toothpick, you dip it in to the gravy, and you put it on her mouth to let her suck out some of the taste from the toothpick. Maybe that will be enough. Then you actually give her some of the gravy. Then you give her the of fat. Why? And of course, this is only if it's not a crisis. If it's a chayla, if it's a chayla, avada, you have to feed the meat right away. I think they even medayik. This is Dafkad Ubra who says I have a craving. She's not actually a chayla. But a chayla, you wouldn't do this. You go right away, give them what they need, because you don't want to play with fire. The only time you don't do this is chutz me'avodah zarah, gilur arais, and shvichas damim. By these three averes chamurais, it's Yaharg Val Yaver. You don't allow them to violate. Avodah zarah minayin. There's actually a whole shaila. What if somebody does want to violate? What if somebody says it's not avodah zarah, not shvichas damim, but I don't want to do it anyway? For instance, let's say there's a chayla on Shabbos, and they want to be Mechal Shabbos for me. He said, no, I don't want the schus of Shabbos. I don't want you to violate the Shabbos for me. Could you listen to him? So the halacha is you're not allowed to listen to him. Avada, you have to violate the Shabbos for him. But the question is, isn't Shabbos, it doesn't say if you're Mechal Shabbos, it's Ke'ilu Abar Avodah Zarah. So Oibezoi, why isn't there a Yaharg Val Yavar on Shabbos as well? So the answer to that, I forgot. But that's the kasha. One of the Chroinim asked, why isn't there a Yaharg Val Yavar for Shabbos as well? Because for Shabbos as well, there's a it's Kilo of Avodah Zarah. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the teretz is. I forgot. I'll have to like say circle back. Talk to Gemara. The Tanya.
Shabbos doesn't have the same oil as somebody
You know what I mean? When we get skila. So that avodah zarah also skila. It's not mamish.
It doesn't mean it literally. It's a figurative thing. There are a lot of things. If you don't, Chazal also say, if you don't wash your hands netilas yadayim, it's also ki'ilu gila arayis or something like that, right? It doesn't mean that literally.
Okay. The Tanya, we learned.
I think about
So Ke'ilu, okay, so Ke'ilu doesn't mean mamish, it means Ke'ilu. Okay. No, how do you know that you have to give up your life for avodah zarah? It says in Krishma every day, so for Rabbi Lazar, if you take the chol nafshecha, if you're going to give up your life, why do you need to say you have to give up your money? If you're going to give up your life, you're giving up everything. And if money is more important, then why does it say b'chol nafshecha? In other words, one of these two things are more important. Let it just say the more important thing, and then surely you'll know you have to give up the less important thing. But the more the teretz is not everybody's alike, and not everybody at every stage in their life is alike. If there's a person who's more worried about his health than his money, you even have to give up your life. So again, this could be two different types of people, or this could be people at different stages in their life when they value things differently. So this is how you know that for avodah zarah you must give up your life. Gilui Rais or Shvichas Dam Minon. How do you know for Gilui Rais and for Shvichas Dam you have to give up your life? The Tanya, Rabbi Yoma, when it's talking about a woman who was nisanish, she was raped, it says in the pasuk she doesn't get any oynish for it. Ki kasher yokim ishal re'eyu u'ritzachei nefesh k'nei davar zeh. This is no different than if someone murders you. It's not her fault. She's the victim. So therefore, she's not chai. But it's such a funny expression in the Torah. The Torah is comparing rape to murder. What's the shaykhs? What are we trying to learn from here? What is the Torah trying to teach us? What halacha about naira hamurasa is the Torah trying to teach us by comparing it to Ritzicha? Ella hareza balalamed within salamed. Really, the Torah is not actually teaching us a halacha by naira hamurasa from Ritziach. Rather, we're teaching us halacha by Ritziach from naira hamurasa. And what is the limud? Ma naira hamurasa nitan latila b'nafshay. By naira hamurasa, if you can prevent the rape by killing the perpetrator, by killing the person who's trying to rape her, you're allowed to do that. And Rashi says, why you're allowed to do that? Because it says in the pasuk, "Ein ma'ishia Allah." She cried for help, and no one was there to help her. So we make a deal that if you could help her, you're allowed to help her in every possible way, even if you have to kill the attempted rape. So to Afar Tzayach, we learn that if you see someone running after somebody else to kill them, you're allowed to kill the person who's trying to do it. And then we also have a limit backwards. Just like a Ritzeach. If someone tells you, if you don't kill Pliny, I'm going to kill you, you have to allow yourself to be killed. So too, a Naira Marasa, she has to allow herself to get killed, and she shouldn't have to do it. Now, I'm happy you made a look, because it doesn't say that. It doesn't say Teharag Val Yavar. It says Yeharag Val Yavar. So it means a male has to allow himself to get killed rather than doing znus. There's a whole shaila. If you look at Tosfos, it takes up a whole Amud Beis. There's a whole big machlokes. What is the halacha with a woman? Does she have to give up her life? And there are those who learn she does, but there are those who learn Yaharig is dafka she doesn't have to. And there's a whole bunch of different stories. Asked by Esther, how could Esther allow herself to be developed? So there's different stories of either bias susam zirmasam, zirma susam zirmasam. They're not considered like humans, so there's not a problem there. Or a woman is kaka oilam. She's not an active participant. So there's a big shaila in the Rishonim if there's a teharig bal tavar by women. But I'll call upon here says yeharig bal yav.
Legend where a woman was taking David of Cossacks, and this was about to happen to her, and so she said to the head Cossack, she said, if you want, I'll teach you a magic formula that if I say this formula, there's no way for you to kill me. I said, really? What's this magic formula? Okay, get out your knife. She said, I'm going to make the magic formula, and then you try to stab me. And so she said, Shema Yisrael Shem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Okay, now try to stab me. And so he stabbed her, and she died. And that was how she saved herself.
Wow. So how do you know that a Ritzeach? How do you know that if someone tells you, if you don't kill Pliny, I'm going to kill you? How do you know that you're not supposed to kill Pliny? That's more a Svari, it's a Svara. Someone came to Rabbi and said, Rabbi, I have a massive problem. The mayor of the city, the ruler of the city, told me, either you kill Pliny, and if you don't, I'm going to kill you. Rabbi said, you know what, too bad. Let him kill you, and don't kill another person. Because my chazes, who said your blood is redder, who said your life is more worthy of saving? And Rashi says, of course, if it's a question of doing an Isser or saving a human life, the Torah wants you to do the Isser and not and save the human life. But in this case, a human life is going to be lost anyway. So if there's going to be a life lost anyway, let's not be over the Isser, and therefore it's better that you should let yourself be killed than you should go and kill somebody else. Now, you might say, what if you have a god ladorach, tzaddik, and then you have a push to eat? Maybe there you might argue differently. So I think he quoted from the Cherush Rim that no, my chazah, the damid dach, every yid is the same. No one could ever say that I'm more important than another, and that I should kill somebody and not get killed. Who ubra? There was a case of a woman who was muberes. The archa, she had this problem. She smelled something, and now she had this craving, and they didn't know what to do. So also, like the Rebbe, they came to Rebbe. Amalu, they told her zilu lechushu, whisper in her ear. And Rashi says, Ulai tuchal l'sapik. If you tell her that it's Yom Kippur, maybe it'll calm her down. But there are starting to learn because maybe the Uber, because this craving came from the Uber, maybe the Uber will hear. Zila l'chushula the Yom Kippur. So l'chushula, they whispered into her ear, v'elchisha, and it worked, and she didn't need it anymore. So Kari alei. So I guess the Rebbe said about this Uber who obviously heard and released his demand. Even before you were born, you're already at tzaddik, because this child was a good child. Who was born? Who was this child? Navik minar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan came out of it. We had another woman who had the same situation. And when they told her that it was Yom Kippur, the craving didn't go away. Karu alay, they called about this child, Zoyru Risham Aracham. This child was wicked from its birth. And who was the child? Navik Minei Shapsoi Atzer Peri. Shapsoi was someone who played with the commodity market and caused, through monopolies, terrible increase in prices, terrible inflation. And someone who causes inflation is a Russia, even if he's a president. Someone who causes inflation is a Russia. It's amazing how political these Gemaras are. It jumps right at you. So they bring down what's the comparison from Rabbi Yochanan to this fellow Shapsoi. Rabbi Yochanan was known that he lost 10 children, and to help be menachem other people who were in tragedy, he carried the bone of his 10th child, and he would always tell them, "Den gramada sarabir." This is the bone of a 10th child. In other words, he relived the trauma and the pain of losing his children on a regular basis just to help somebody else. That's the ultimate in selflessness. While Shapsoi was the opposite. He was such a greedy person. He cared so much about himself. He didn't care that he was harming the whole world by creating inflation. He just wanted more profit. That's what the media likes to call corporate greed. And he's the opposite extreme of the selflessness of Rabbi Yochanan.
Wouldn't that make him tummy the whole time?
I'm not sure. It was very small. That's a good point. I guess we know for sure he couldn't have been a kohen.